The briefing room aboard the Celestial Accord smelled of recycled air and wounded pride. Professor Cale Veyron stood at the head of the holographic table, his bioluminescent crest dimmed to a pale, embarrassed amber. Around him sat the finest cartographic minds the Galactic Survey Commission had assembled: 6 xenogeographers, 4 atmospheric specialists, 2 quantum terrain analysts, all of them staring at the same rotating map of Deathworld KX-7 that had defeated them for 6 consecutive years. The planet pulsed slowly on the display. Storms of ammonia and sulfuric acid wrapped its equator in permanent golden shrouds. Its oceans were not water but a corrosive brine thick enough to dissolve survey drones in 48 minutes. Its poles crackled with electromagnetic interference so severe that orbital scanners read nothing but white noise. 3 survey ships had been lost. 1 crew had vanished entirely. The Commission had spent 4.2 billion galactic credits on the project. They had mapped 11% of the surface. The proposal, Professor Veyron said, his 4-fingered hand gesturing at the single personnel file floating beside the planet, is unorthodox. I will not pretend otherwise. Commander Haiwa, the Commission's logistics chief, leaned forward. Her compound eyes scanned the file with barely concealed disbelief. She's from Earth. Yes. The Deathworld. The very same. Was sat back. The silence in the room carried the weight of every failed expedition, every dissolved drone, every crew member who had gone into KX-7 storms and not come back. She's a geologist, said Dr. Jomi, the senior xenocartographer, flipping through the human's credentials with the careful skepticism of someone who had personally watched a reinforced survey shuttle crumple like paper in KX-7's upper atmosphere. A freelance one. No commission training, no quantum terrain certification, no, he paused. She lists her primary qualification as grew up in the Cascade Mountains during the long winter period. What does that even mean? I believe, Professor Veyron said carefully, it means she was raised somewhere where the environment was actively attempting to kill her, and she found this instructive. Another silence. Send her in, was said finally. Mara Ellison did not look like someone who had survived 4 continental-scale blizzards, 2 volcanic mudslides, and a career of solo fieldwork in regions that professional survey teams classified as inadvisable. She was compact, brown-skinned, and wearing field clothes that were visibly patched at the elbows. She carried a single battered equipment case. She sat down across from Professor Veyron without waiting to be invited. "You've read the briefing?" he asked. "On the shuttle over," she said. "Your drum configurations are wrong." The room temperature dropped by an invisible but palpable degree. "I beg your pardon," said Dr. Jomi. "Your survey drones," Mara repeated, pulling up the Commission's equipment specs on the table's shared display. "Thermoplastic polymer shells. Great for vacuum environments. Terrible for corrosive brine with variable temperature gradients. The acid's not what's destroying them, it's the thermal expansion cycling. They're cracking from the inside every time they pass the brine-to-atmosphere interface." She scrolled to the electromagnetic interference data. "And your scanners are trying to filter out the EM noise." "Don't. The noise is the data. KX-7's crust has magnetite-rich fault lines. The interference patterns are a topographic map. You've been deleting it." The room was very quiet. "We've been deleting it," Professor Veyron repeated slowly. "For 6 years, yeah." Mara closed the display. "I'll need a fabrication bay and about 4 hours to modify 3 drones. Then I'll want a surface drop at coordinates." She tapped the planet's southern pole, where every previous team had refused to land due to the interference readings, "here. That region," Dr. Jomi said tightly, "has EM interference readings that render all navigational equipment inoperable." Mara looked at him pleasantly. "I know. That's why I brought a compass." She went down alone, which the Commission only permitted because she signed 17 liability waivers and because Professor Veyron had quietly decided that if there was even a 3% chance she was right, The career embarrassment of the past 6 years demanded they find out. She went down with her 3 modified drones, her compass, and a field pack that contained, among other things, a hand-drawn topographic notebook, 40 meters of climbing rope, a geological hammer, 2 emergency thermal suits, a water filtration kit rated for terrestrial toxins that turned out to work reasonably well on KX-7's brine with minor modification, and a protein bar that she ate somewhere over the southern ice field. The Commission watched through the modified drone's feeds. The electromagnetic interference that had defeated their billion credit scanners for 6 years appeared on the modified drone's receivers as clear, structured signal, exactly as Mara had predicted. Fault lines, tectonic boundaries, subsurface cave networks, mineral deposits of 6 previously undocumented classifications. She walked through storms that had shredded survey equipment by reading the wind the way most beings read words, by learning the grammar of it, the rhythm, the meaning underneath the violence. She called in at the 4-hour mark. Got the southern pole done. Moving north. Send me the partial maps you have from years 2 and 3. I can see where your teams were sampling and I want to compare to what I'm reading from the fault lines. Professor Veyron checked the incoming data feed and stopped speaking. His crest had gone a very bright, astonished gold. You've mapped the entire southern hemisphere. Yeah, the interference bands are really cooperative once you stop fighting them. A sound that might have been her jumping over something. Also, there's a cave network under the southern pole that goes down about 40 meters and connects to a thermal vent system. I think that's where your missing crew's emergency beacon is pinging from. You might want to send a recovery team. The room erupted. She called in again at the 11-hour mark, having slept for 2 hours in a rock shelter she had identified using the geological hammer to test acoustic resonance on the cliff face. Northern mapping is done, she said. Sending data now. There's also a significant hydrothermal deposit in the equatorial region, stable ground under the acid storms, if you go in at the right thermal window. I've marked the window timing in the notes. Professor Veyron looked at the completed map of KX-7 rotating on the holographic table. Every continent. Every coastline. Every tectonic boundary and mineral deposit and cave system and thermal vent. 11% to 100%. 6 years to half a day. MS. Ellison, he said carefully, what was it that allowed you to? The planet's trying to kill you, Mara said, and he could hear her packing her equipment in the background, unhurried. Most species, that means the planet wins. But where I'm from, that's just called Tuesday. You learn to listen to what the environment is actually telling you instead of arguing with it. A pause. You've got good data in those 6 years of failed missions, by the way. You were just reading it wrong. I can write you a methodology guide if you want. Professor Veyron looked around the room at Dr. Jomi, who was staring at the completed map with the expression of a man rethinking his entire career, at Commander Haiwa, whose compound eyes had gone wide and reflective, at 6 xenogeographers and 4 atmospheric specialists who had just watched a human with a compass and a geology hammer do in half a day what they had failed to do in 6 years. Yes, he said. Please. On the surface of KX-7, in a storm that would have dissolved a standard survey drone in 48 minutes, Mara Ellison finished packing her field case, glanced up at the acid yellow sky with something that might have been appreciation, and began walking north toward the extraction point. She was already thinking about the next planet on the Commission's impossible list. She had a feeling she'd be back on the shuttle by dinner.